You're listening to Now It's the News. I'm Beowulf Rockland. I will tell you that for me, personally, the end of the year, the very end of the year, New Year's Eve is probably more stressful for me than Christmas because it's more of a culinary time for my family. It's more of a cooking time. There are refreshments and treats to be made. There are dishes to be assembled, and I personally need a lot of help. So we've turned to the experts here. Karen Page, she is the author of Kitchen Creativity, Unlocking Culinary Genius with Wisdom, Inspiration and Ideas from the Most Creative Chefs. Karen, welcome to Now It's the News. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
I'm going to need a lot of wisdom, inspiration, and ideas because I have essentially none at this point in terms of New Year's Eve. Where do I start for something like that? For your average schmo, what can I learn from the great chefs in terms of putting together something halfway decent for New Year's Eve?
Well, what we've learned over the years, and Kitchen Creativity is our 11th book, so we've been around the block a few times with some other books, including one called What to Drink with What You Eat. And that was really based on talking to some of the most creative and successful chefs in the United States and realizing that their insight was that what's on the plate can only take you so far, and that it's also what's in the glass that matters. So it's all about creativity, not only on the plate, but in the glass. And I think one place that's especially true is New Year's Eve, where you can pay attention to what's in the glass and start by making that creative. And a lot of times it has to do with serving sparkling wines. And it doesn't have to be champagne because a lot of us have champagne tastes and beer budgets. So I think it's a lot of times it's about having something else that's just sparkling in the glass that gets the mood sparkling wherever you are. And so that could be, it could be beer itself if that is the budget that you're setting. But if otherwise you can turn to other sparkling wines like Cava, Moscato d'Asti, Prosecco, sake, sparkling sake, and the German Sekt, which is their sparkling wine. And so, in fact, in Kitchen Creativity, we have a whole section on New Year's Day and New Year's Eve in the A to Z section in the back of the book. And what the alphabetical lists serve as is modeled on our best-selling book, The Flavor Bible. It's really a way that you can look up any topic that you're interested in from A to Z. So from art and design to yoga and other topics. You can run through and look up, in this case, New Year's Day and New Year's Eve, and find a list of different dishes, different ideas that can serve as a jumping-off point. So on New Year's Eve, it's really, I think, centered on the champagne and sparkling wines, but also there's traditional dishes like baked Alaska is a tradition at New Year's Eve, black-eyed peas in the South, blini, cakes, caviar, duck, stuffed mushrooms is very popular, long noodles, which signify long lives in the Asian traditions. So there's lots of starting places that you can have to really spur your creativity. And just saying that, a lot of people will say, oh, wow, I've got a great idea for, my mother's stuffed mushrooms. And how can I update that and make that a little more contemporary? And that can be a jumping off point.
Well, that is a great place to start, and I'm very happy for a reference manual, so to speak, alphabetically organized, because I will be targeting certain areas, and I think drinks are a great place to start. By the way, you mentioned that there was yoga involved in this. Is there a chef's pose that I should be taking into account for New Year's Eve?
Well, believe it or not, we interviewed leading chefs who talked about one of the secrets of their creativity is they're not only very focused on developing what we call the outer senses, the senses of taste and smell and hearing, sight, touch, and so forth, but also what we call the inner senses in the book Kitchen Creativity, which we refer to various topics like instinct, developing your instinct, your intuition, your insight, inspiration and imagination. All of these things fuel your creativity in the kitchen. And a lot of the ways that leading chefs have told us they develop their creative ideas is through turning inward and tapping those inner senses, which you can do through things like meditation and yoga. And in fact, Rick Bayless, who is featured on, he's got his own PBS Best Show and his own James Beard Award-winning restaurants in Chicago that specialize in Mexican cuisine. He is a 20-plus year yoga aficionado who talked to us about his yoga practice and how the fact that he, when he's looking for to come up with a new idea or to solve a culinary problem he's facing, he'll go for a walk around the block and use that insight meditation practice that he developed as a yogi to be able to come up with an idea. And he said also sometimes it'll come to him in his dreams. He'll wake up in the morning with almost a word-for-word recipe or idea for a next dish that he's working on. So it's a great tip in kitchen creativity. If you're trying to come up with a new idea, think about it before you go to sleep and even write out a question or write it down on a piece of paper what you'd like to dream about. And a lot of times whatever you dream about, if not an actual recipe, as Rick's been lucky enough to come up with, you'll come up with ideas that you can kind of connect the dots and come up with a solution for whatever culinary challenge you're facing.
We are speaking with Karen Page. She is the author of Kitchen Creativity, Unlocking Culinary Genius with Wisdom, Inspiration and Ideas from the World's Most Creative Chefs. What food dreams do you have, Karen Page?
Well, I think as the author of, I think this is our 11th book, Kitchen Creativity, following in the footsteps of books like The Flavor Bible and What to Drink with What You Eat, Culinary Artistry, and Becoming a Chef. I think we probably dream about our next books in some sense. What's
maybe some of the nightmares involve publishing deadlines.
Not too bad.
Okay,
We're pretty good about that, but most of the time. But yeah, I think I was a waitress when I was in college, and I still have those waitressing nightmares. Those don't seem to go away. I think when you're a perfectionist and you're always looking to, do the right thing and get things done in a certain time-pressured environment, I think it's one of the reasons that I have so much respect for chefs and what they do, because I know that pressure cooker environment of professional restaurant kitchens, and I think that's why it's especially relevant to learn about creativity from chefs because of the difficult circumstances that they are working in, yet they have to be creative sometimes coming up with daily specials for the menu, and how can they take whatever's in the walk-in refrigerator and come up with a special based on that. And so we wanted a book that would help them out in those time-pressured situations, as well as everybody, all of us who cook at home for ourselves, for our families. We face the same situation that leading chefs face. How can we open our refrigerator doors and open our cupboards and take whatever is in there that we happen to have on hand and turn it into something delicious? And this is the book that will help you come up with exactly the approach to doing just that.
And I guess whenever you're cooking for someone aside from yourself or your immediate family, you kind of put yourself under that pressure because you want to knock it out of the park. So on an evening like New Year's Eve, how do you take into account the inevitable mistimings or mishaps that take place with, say, the main dish, and how do you stage refreshments or pre-dishes so that you can buy yourself some time if something goes awry in the kitchen?
Great question. Well, one of the approaches we take in Kitchen Creativity is to really think about what we call the who, what, when, where, why, and how of coming up with a new dish. And I think the who is really central for those special occasions like the holidays, where who is gathered around your table or in your living room that you're looking to entertain, and what are their particular preferences. And I think the more you can really flesh out, and whether that's family or friends or neighbors, the more you can know about them, then you can develop some ideas right around their particular preferences. So in some cases, I think it's become much more popular to be able to ask for food preferences. A lot of times it's food aversions. In this day and age, we've got an estimated 75% of the world's population is lactose intolerant. So knowing if you've got lactose intolerant guests, vegetarianism and veganism has grown tremendously. It's a huge trend over the last 10 years. Knowing whether people want to have some plant-based options on hand. So again, those stuffed mushrooms that we were talking about earlier are great because everybody who loves mushrooms loves stuffed mushrooms, and so that's a great one to have on hand. But I think asking people up front about their particular food preferences and aversions will give you a sense, sort of a starting point. Or you might have friends who just got back from Italy, and they're going to be the honored guests at your gathering, and maybe you can have some dishes that with a nod to Italy that will give them a conversation point to start talking about their trip a little bit and make them feel welcomed back to the U.S. after a trip like that. So whatever you can do to bring that sense of personalization to your gathering is something that really puts the focus where it should be at any holiday gathering, which is on the people themselves, their preferences, what would make them happy, what makes them feel special. And so I think the more you know about your guests, the better you're able to do that.
Interesting. Fit the food to the eater, in other words, so make it special for them.
Absolutely.
We're speaking with Karen Page. She's the author of Kitchen Creativity, Unlocking Culinary Genius with Wisdom, Inspiration, and Ideas from the World's Most Creative Chefs. Tell us, what are you going to be doing, and what are you going to be preparing, if it's not too much of a giveaway, for New Year's Eve?
Well, it's so funny. My husband, Andrew, and I have been on book tour for the last couple of months with Kitchen Creativity. So we've been traveling from coast to coast out to the West Coast in California, north and south, and then back home in New York City. So we literally just got home, and we're still working out our plans. We've got plans to see friends on New Year's Eve and on New Year's Day to go. And I think the literal invitation from our fellow author friend, Laura Day, was to wear your pajamas for the New Year's Day gathering. So it's usually like a hair of the dog kind of thing, where we watch movies together and hang out. And I think everybody's probably had so much champagne the night before, so it's much more we're looking for a high-carb meal on New Year's Day. And so traditional dishes like the black-eyed peas I mentioned before that signify good luck in the South, dishes like braised greens, and I think just, things that are healthful, I think they will signify good things for the new year. I know that John Fraser in New York City, who's got the 3-star restaurant Dovetail, he typically serves truffle arancini canapes, which are like little rice balls with truffles, so kind of extending that holiday celebration. Melted leeks in frittata, and frittata is something that will keep room temperature rather than making individual omelets. A frittata is that Italian-inspired dish that you can just kind of leave out at room temperature for a few hours if you need to and let guests serve themselves. And he serves his with a taleggio fondue, which is like a beautiful cheesy accompaniment to that. So it's a great day for, like I said, the carb-heavy things that really help soak up any leftover alcohol in the system are going to be completely obliterated by those high-carb treats.
And that is something to consider. Are there any other ways that you can avoid the consequences of the next day in terms of what you lay out in the kitchen?
Well, as the former wine columnist for the Washington Post, I had I tasted a lot of wines professionally for a living, and one of the things I really recommend was something that someone had advised me, a fellow wine writer. It's like, well, when you're going out to a wine tasting dinner, don't forget to keep your water glass full all the time and to alternate all those sips of wine with sips of water. Not only does that cleanse your palate, but it sort of makes sure that you stay hydrated because too much alcohol can definitely be dehydrating. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. Keep well hydrated. That will keep you in good stead. Excellent.
Well, fantastic advice. We've been speaking with Karen Page. She is the author of Kitchen Creativity, Unlocking the Culinary Genius with Wisdom, Inspiration, and Ideas from the World's Most Creative Chefs. I feel emboldened with wisdom, inspiration, and ideas for New Year's Eve for my particular gathering. Karen, thank you so much for spending the time with us, and Happy New Year to you.
Same to you. Happy New Year, and all the best for 2018.